Hi everybody.
Hello.
It's Grandad here again. I've got Sam along with me.
Yep.
And as I'm in my white coat, you can imagine we're going to do a bit of science today. Now what we're going to attempt to do is a little bit of electroplating. But electroplating is quite interesting, and I've got the various bits and pieces here which I'm hoping is going to work for it. Now you can plate things without using electricity. I'm going to use electricity to plate a couple of items here, and I'll explain that as I go along. But to start with, which might take a
couple of items.
Well, these items, these things I'm going to plate, these metal items, which I'm going to, these are what they call items, metal things.
Yes.
I've got a couple of things here that I'm hoping to electroplate. But before we do that, I'm going to try another method of coating one metal with another. Now in this little dish here, this little pot, I've got some blue substance, which is copper sulphate, and a little bit of
At least it doesn't stink of egg on this experiment.
no, there's no stinky eggs on this one. There's a little bit of sulphate, sodium bisulphate, just a little bit, in a warm solution. I boiled up a little bit of water and I've made a solution of it. Now they tell me that if you dip in the blade of a knife, and I've got a knife here, a little craft knife, and I've cleaned it well and polished it all to get any grease off it. Now all I'm going to do with this one is just dip it in to the mixture. Dip it in like that, and we'll have a look at it in a minute and see how that's doing, because apparently that may actually coat copper onto that blade without using any electricity at all, which is really interesting. So I thought we'd try that. Now the other two things that we've got here, we've got some chemicals. This first one is nickel ammonium sulphate. Nickel ammonium sulphate. Now put a little bit of that in this jar, and I've got some hot water in my kettle here, so I'm going to melt that in a little bit of that water.
Turned into blue water now.
It's turned it blue. It's a blue solution, and I'm just going to stir it. I've put a bit of hot water in the hope that it would dissolve a little bit quicker. I don't know how quick it's going to dissolve, but I'm hoping because it's warm it'll dissolve. So I'll stir that up well, and it's turned a lovely green colour.
So how did you make that other blue one there?
Well, that one I'd already got mixed. That was some copper I'd already got mixed, so I just added a little bit to it. Now in this other beaker, I've already put some copper sulphate and a little bit of sodium bisulphate in with that one. Now I'm going to put some boiling water in that one again. It's distilled water, incidentally, and I boiled it up in that kettle, so it's quite warm, and I'm going to stir that with my other stick, and it's a slightly different colour. They're both a sort of a bluey green colour.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping they're going to melt pretty quick, because I've put them in warm water, and that might actually help. I don't know whether it will, but it might do. So I'm stirring them up well. Now I'm not sure how long this experiment takes. I mean, the videos I've seen on YouTube about it, it seemed to happen pretty quickly, because as you know, I can't edit my videos and make them so that you can do a time lapse and you know, shoot forward a little bit. So unless all this happens pretty quickly, and I don't want to make the video too long, so I'm hoping that it's going to work reasonably quickly. Now what I've got to plate some little items like this. Now this is one. It's a little brass candlestick which I picked up at a shop, and it's quite a big one, this one. But I thought I'd do that so you could see what it looked like.
And we got that from our holiday.
We picked it up on our holiday, that's right, from a charity shop, and it cost me 50p. So I've cleaned it up, and there it is. And you can see, I hope you can tell, that that's a really nice coppery colour. I hope you can see it in the shade of my coat. I know the camera's in the sun, but I'm hoping that's going to show up a nice coppery colour. Now on these electrodes here, I've got some more of them. Two more of these little candlesticks, but these are much smaller, and they're brass as well. Now what I've done, I've rigged up a little electrical current here, and I've got it set at 6 volts. And I've got the cables leading around with all this jumble of wires. So my two negative terminals, I've got my items on them, my two little candlesticks. And on my positive terminals, I've got a little bit of carbon rod.
Okay.
Now what I'm going to do is dip each one of these carbon rods, when I sort out my wires a little bit, into these solutions. I'm going to put the one down that side and the other one into the other beaker. Now then, I'll leave the little stick in there to separate, make sure that these two things don't touch. So now I've got my carbon rods in the liquid, and it feels quite warm because I put it in warm water, and the chemicals have dissolved now. So I've got nickel in this one and copper in this one. So now I'm going to put my items in, one into that dish and one into this dish. Now I'm hoping to see some bubbling going on, and now I've put them in, I can top up a little bit, just so it's to the top of those candlesticks that are in the solution, so that they're totally covered. Now I wasn't going to totally cover them because I thought I should be able to show the difference in the colour if it does work, the difference in the colour on the candlestick itself. But the idea is that I've got this candlestick, which is the coppery, which is the brass colour, and hopefully these other two candlesticks, which are also brass, will change. One getting coated with copper in this solution, and the other one getting coated with nickel in this solution. Now, as I say, I don't know how quickly this happens. I'm hoping it's not going to take too long, and I hope I've connected it up right. I've got the item in the to be plated on the negative side and the positive on the other side. Now it's bubbling at the carbon electrode, so I know there's a current flowing through, so I'm hoping that it is going to work. Now this method of doing this electroplating, I got the idea from it partly by looking on YouTube and other YouTube users on how to electroplate things, but it was one of the experiments that was in my chemistry set that I showed you earlier on, the Merit chemistry set, and that's where these chemicals came from. Because the nickel, especially the nickel, I looked on online to see if I could buy some more, because I thought I'd buy some, and it's very expensive. So this little bit that I've got in this tub here is very expensive, so it was quite surprising that it was in this chemistry set. I don't know how much it cost some years ago when this chemistry set was brought out, but it certainly is an expensive chemical to buy now. And I might buy some more, I don't know, but it's very expensive, and for the amount of work I'm going to do with it at the moment anyway, unless this works really well, I may do a little bit more coating of metals if this works. The copper sulphate, again, it came in the Merit set and in another chemistry set I had, and the sodium bisulphate came in the Merit set as well. So all these chemicals were readily available in the chemistry set which I bought. Now, as I say, I don't know how long this is going to take. I mean, on the videos that I've seen of people doing copper plating and metal plating, it seemed to happen pretty quickly. So I was quite surprised about that. I thought it'd have to stay in there a long time before it worked, but maybe it doesn't. Now I'm just going to have a little look at what's going on with my blade. Now, as you know, I just dipped this in. I didn't do any, there's no electricity going on with this particular knife blade one. It's just sitting in this material here, which is copper sulphate and a little bit of bisulphate, sodium bisulphate and copper sulphate, and it's just sitting there. Now, you can see on there that it's gone quite black already. Now, I don't know whether that means that it's actually copper coated it. I mean, it doesn't look much like copper, but I'm told that when copper and steel go together, it doesn't necessarily go shiny coppery. It turns the copper, the metal, black rather than copper. But I'll just take it out of there now and wipe it on a cloth just to see if there is any coppery. I mean, the black certainly comes off. It certainly, the black has come off onto my tissue, but looking at the blade itself, it doesn't appear. Oh, I don't know. It's a little difficult to say whether that blade has now got copper on it. I'll put it back in the solution for a little bit longer and leave it there and jiggle it about. Now, this copper solution which I made, although I put copper sulphate in there and the bisulphate as well, I actually used another copper solution which I'd got when I was doing a previous experiment where I was stripping the copper off an American penny. And I used, for that, I used a bleach, which I can't, hydrogen peroxide, which is a type of bleach, hydrogen peroxide and ammonia. So in that liquid there's not only the copper sulphate and the bisulphate, which I put in, but there's also that ammonia and the hydrogen peroxide. So I guess this solution mixed up, so I thought I'd just use it and just see whether it does any good, whether it makes any difference to it, whether it improves it or makes it worse. I don't know. But that's certainly what's in there. Now, whether those irons, having those extra chemicals in there means it isn't going to work, I don't know. But unless you experiment with things, you just don't know whether they're going to work. Now, these have been bubbling away here for a little minute, and I'll just lift them out. And I'm sure on the copper sulphate one, I can certainly see some staining. Now, I don't know whether you can see it in the camera there, but if you compare it to the original, there's definitely a change from the shiny brassy material to a more coppery one. So I see my electrode there is breaking up, which is a little bit disconcerting. The carbon electrode which I put in is breaking up a little bit, so that's a bit worrying. I don't know whether that's going to make any difference to it. I don't know whether this one's going to do the same. This one isn't breaking up so bad, but it's bubbling away. Now I'll have a look on the other one. And again, we're getting a tarnish on there. So there's definitely something happening. But whether it's silvery, I mean, the idea of these two chemicals going in here are that it will turn the little candlestick a silvery color, which is nickel, and the other one a coppery color. Now I'm just agitating the liquids down a little bit to see whether they will actually plate. Now, as I say, on the videos I watched on YouTube with other people doing it, and there's a lot of videos on it, so if you're interested in this and you want to try it for yourself, you could go on the YouTube. Well, if you're watching me on YouTube, you just go to these other channels, Electro Plating, and you'll see different people, and they use different methods. I mean, you can use vinegar to plate with in a similar way to this, rather than using certainly the copper one. You can use bicarbonate, baking soda. I think it's called baking soda. They put baking soda in and a couple of copper rods, and put that in an electrolyte to produce electrolyte, because you need an electrolyte, because electricity won't pass through pure water. It's not electrical conductive, so you can't do it with just ordinary water. it's got to have an electrolyte in there, and you can put baking soda in and a couple of copper electrodes and leave it in there for half an hour or so, and you'll end up with a copper solution. The solution will turn green, which showing you there's copper in there, and then you can put your item in with the copper on the negative terminal in the same way that I have here on these items, and it should copper coat, electroplate the copper that's in solution and on your copper pipe, or your little bit of copper strip or whatever you put in instead of this carbon rod that I've got, and it should copper plate that particular thing. Now another thing you can use is vinegar. You can use vinegar. I don't know whether they put anything else in with vinegar, but they put something in maybe to make it a little bit more of an electrolyte. You can use that. And you can also use muriatic acid, which is hydrochloric acid, a weak solution of that, not too strong a solution, and that'll plate as well. That'll work in the same sort of way, and you'll get some plating out from that. Now with all these things you've got to be careful. I mean, I've got my coat on. I'm not using gloves because these things are a bit fiddly to work with gloves, but there's anything really dangerous here, but I am being very careful not to splash it about or get into it. And I've got my goggles in my pocket, so if I think I'm going to be getting near to the chemicals, I've got my goggles on. I haven't actually got them on at the moment, but I can see that this little candlestick in this one has definitely changed colour, and it's definitely looking a little coppery. I mean, maybe that's a bit of wishful thinking, but it's certainly lost its shininess in comparison to this one. It's lost all its shine, and in this one again it's lost its shine. It doesn't look really silvery, so I don't know. It may be that it's just going to take a little while for this to work. Now I've got it set on 6 volts here, so what I'll do, just in case the voltage wants a little bit more, I'll put it up to 7 volts, because you can adjust this little electrical system. I'll put it up a little bit higher. Where's my lights gone out? Has it gone out? No. Got my lights on now. Now, I can't see the electrode bubbling there. I don't know why. That one's bubbling. So I'm just definitely producing a current. And I assume this one's doing it as well. Although I can't exactly see any bubbles coming off this one. So I'm hoping it's making a current. Not bubbling as much as I hoped it would. That's bubbling really well. I just hope I've got these round the right way. I'm always a little bit dubious about which way round these should be. But I'll just leave you for a little minute while I go and get my paperwork and check on what I've done. Right, I'm back again. I'm sorry about that, but I left my notes inside. This is a book I got, incidentally, with that chemistry set, and this is where I'm getting the information for doing this electroplating. Now, if I find the page with electroplating business on it, here we are. Tells you get a little strip of brass, may be used, connections. Yes, a positive turbine attached to carbon electrode. and place the carbon rod and brass object in the solution. So let me just see again, let me just read this. Best thing first, a little strip of brass, thoroughly clean, ammonium sulphate neg cap, use a wire. Attach a wire from the negative terminal of the battery to the brass strip. So that's the negative. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Because my red is for positive and my black is for negative. So I'm hoping I've done that right. And then examine the brass from time to time. You'll find when you remove it and wash it under the tap, dry it and polish it, metal polish, you should have a good bright coating of nickel which will not easily come off. So I'm hoping I've done that right. Now, I'm sure it says attach the wire from the negative terminal of the battery to the brass strip. So this is, my black is negative and my positive is red. That's the way I always do it anyway. So I'm hoping that's right and that my electroplating is going the right direction. Now I'll just check a little bit on this to see whether I'm getting a... There's definitely something happening. That little candlestick is going a dull colour. So something's happening to that little candlestick in that solution. Now my copper solution, and that's definitely got a coppery tinge to it now. I can see that, and it's definitely, compared to the other candlestick, if I show you that, that has definitely got a coppery coating on it. So that is definitely working. My copper sulphate. Now it might be idea, if you're doing this on a big scale, to rig up a little bubbler. Get a little, in fact I was going to do a bubbler in this, but I changed my mind in the end and didn't do it. But I just using the agitation now and again to stir up my liquid. But if I had a little bubbler, of which I have got one, a little aquarium pump, and put some bubbles through this liquid, it would keep the solution stirred up a little bit, and that would help, I'm sure, to show whether there was any chemicals being, you know, make sure the chemicals are all around the items so that they electroplate evenly. Because obviously the nearer to the electrode the item is, the better it will coat. Now I've done it in a very small way here to show it, and I can see that the one side of the candlestick looks a little bit more coloured than the other side, and I'm moving it about in there in the hope that it will coat everything as evenly as possible. Now I've put the voltage up a little bit. Now they tell me that putting too much voltage can be harmful, so you don't want to put too much voltage, but because I'm using two setups, I thought maybe I ought to put a little bit more current through, because it's sharing the current a little bit, because I've got two connected and I've got so many connections here, I might be losing a little bit of current through all these connections, and therefore maybe the current isn't so good. I'm hoping it's all connecting up nicely. Wriggle them all around a little bit. But it certainly looks as if it's working. Now, in this light outside here, where I have to do my little laboratory, I have to do it outside because I haven't got any room inside anywhere to do it. And it's safer to do things outside if you can. And it's quite a nice sunny day, so it's good for filming maybe, but not so good for seeing colours. But what I'll do, I'll take out this one little item and unhook it, and I'll just see whether this can be shone up at all. I mean, it's certainly not coming off as easily as the black thing did. Now, I wouldn't say that that has gone particularly silver. It certainly changed colour, and it's done something to it. Whether it's actually turned it silvery, I wouldn't know. Let's have a little look at the copper one. Now, this one looks a little bit better. It's certainly not rubbing off. Now, I wouldn't expect this to be shiny straight away. Now, hopefully you can see that compared to, if I compare the two, if I get in the shade of it maybe it'll show up better in the shade. But you can see that that little candlestick is dull coppery colour compared to the bright shiny brass colour which it started as. And that's where I've got this one as a control to show what the colour was. But as you can see now, that's turned a much more coppery colour in this solution. So I'm going to say that this is working, but I'm not 100% convinced that it can be done very quickly. Now, the one where I've dipped, the blade has turned black again. Now, it does say that this is not a very good coating, but it's turned black on there. Now, that tells me that there's something being deposited. And obviously, because I've got it in a copper solution, that's almost certainly copper that's being put onto that blade. Because electroplating onto metal, steel or iron, is not easy. It's a bit more technical, and it's not really something you can do at home with a with electroplating method, which I've got here. But apparently the dipping method does work, as you can see, and it does coat something. Now, I'm going to try and polish that later to see whether it is coppery, and if I do manage to get it coppery, when I come up on another video, I'll tell you about it and tell you what the results were, because I'm not able to edit these videos very good and show one thing and then go back to it and show another thing and join it together. I haven't got a very good editing system, but I do try to put these videos up and tell you as much as I can about the products and how it works. So what I'll do, I'll continue here now with this electroplating and see if I can get some good results with it, and if it does work, I'll let you know on another video. Incidentally, just a while ago I was doing some dissolving, as I told you about that chemical there I got from dissolving the copper coating on an American cent, 1 cent coin, which is copper coated with an internal core of nickel, I think it is. No, zinc, sorry, I got it wrong. Zinc. It's got an internal core with zinc. Now, I cleaned that penny up, and I haven't brought it out here with me, otherwise I would show you. I might show it on another video. But it did work really well. When I cleaned up the penny and got rid of all the black oxide of the copper, it turned the copper had turned black and into an oxide, and then you washed it off and cleaned it off. So now I've got a nice bright shiny silvery looking 1 cent coin, an American 1 cent coin, which is actually made of nickel. Where am I? Not nickel. I've said it again. Not nickel. Zinc. A nice little zinc penny. I'm sorry about that. I get mixed up with my words. You'll have to forgive me. I'm an old man and I get things wrong sometimes. So always check everything out, incidentally. Always look on YouTube if you're interested in any of these things. Check it out like I did. Make sure you look at all the videos you can on it, get as much information, and try different methods. I mean, some of them work better than others. But there's several ways of doing this. As I say, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. So check it out, do research, and if you want to try it yourself, you can. But certainly the copper sulphate one is working real well. That's coppering up nicely. And the zinc one, it certainly changed colour. It doesn't exactly look shiny at the moment, but maybe when I clean it, it will. So I'll go on running this experiment a little bit longer, and I'll say that it's the end of this little video, and I'll tell you the results in another video if there's anything interesting to tell you. So until we do another video together, it's Grandad saying, as usual, bye-bye now, keep safe, bye-bye, bye-bye.